Now let's try to move to the next problem in this challenge. Now this again seems very interesting. It says that execute asynchronous functions in parallel. Okay. So typically it's saying given an array of asynchronous functions. So this function that you see, this is basically an array of functions. This is an array of functions. Okay, sir. Return a new promise. Give an array of asynchronous function, return a new promise. So this function should go and return a promise, return a promise. Each function in the array accepts no arguments, okay, and returns a promise. All the promises should be executed in parallel. It says that all the function is an array of the function. None of the function has any argument that they expect, and each of these function is nothing but it returns a promise, and all these promises has to be executed in parallel. Okay. Now, if the promise is there could be two things. One is the resolve, other could be the reject. So, promise resolves. When all the promise return from the functions were resolved successfully in parallel, the resolved value of the promise should be an array of all the resolved values of promise in the same order as they were in the functions. The promise should resolve when all the asynchronous function in the array have completed execution in the parallel. Okay. It is trying to say that so if the promise is resolved, right, the resolved value of the promise should be the array of all the resolved values of the individual function outputs or the promises, and they should be kept in the same order in the array as they have the order in the input function. Cool, that's clear. Now if I go and talk about the reject part, promise rejects. When any of the promise returned from the function were rejected, promise should also reject with the same reason of the first rejection. Should also reject with the reason of the first rejection. There are multiple functions, any of the function can reject. So the first function which rejected, output should reject with the same reason. Please solve it without using the built-in promise.all function. So I cannot make use of promise.all functions. Fair enough. Okay, let's try to understand with the help of an example. I have this input function which is an array, right? So this is an array of functions. So this is one function. So only one function, right? Now, of a time of 200, at a time of 200 timeout milliseconds, it should go and resolve the value as 5. Promise all signal resolve with the value of 5. Perfectly fine. This was really simple. Let's move to the next question. So here I have multiple functions. This takes 200 milliseconds to run, and it resolves, and it in the 100 milliseconds this rejects with the error, right? So output should be the first one to reject. So this error should be printed out. Fair enough. Good. This is also simple. Let's take one more example. I have the input function 50 and it resolves at 150, then it resolves, and then 100, then it resolves, right? So it should be again t at 150 it should return, and this time 4 and then 10 and then 16 should put up. Fair enough. So this looks cool. Let's try to go and write the code for the same, right? So what I'll have to do here is that this is functions. So what I go and do is that I have to return the promise only, right? So I first of all go and write return, and I go and say that new promise, and the new promise will have the resolve and the reject wala part. Fair enough. So I have the resolve and the reject part, and then I have the const, and then I want to say that output should be an array itself. I go and say that let count equals to functions dot length. This is the function which is the argument I have. So I go and find that how many their functions are there. Cool. And then for each of this, I go and say that for let I equals to 0, I is less than functions dot length length I plus plus, and then I go and say that functions I, and then I go and call it, and since it is a promise, then I go and say then, and then I go and say that response output I equals to response, and then I go and say that count minus minus. Now if at this point of time if count value is equals to 0, in that case I should simply go and return resolve output or I can say that catch insect. What I'm going to say here is that for output count function dot length for each of the functions, right, I go and iterate it, I go and call that function, then response output I equals to response count minus minus. If count value becomes equals to 0, then I should go and resolve it and catch reject. Let's try to run this and see if it works. Perfectly, all the cases are working fine. If I go and try to submit to see if the code is submitted, let's see that what the output is. I'm hoping that my solution will be accepted and submitted to the LeetCode. Perfect. So my solution has been accepted. It has beaten 24.20%. 79 milliseconds is the time that it took. Fair enough. Now we are good to go. Let's move to the next question. So now let's try to move to the next question. This is basically the 20th question that we have to solve. This is the 20th question. The question says that is object empty? What does that mean? Given an object or an array is also an object, return if it is empty. And what is the definition of the empty? An empty object contains no key value pair and an empty array contains no elements. Simple, right? You may assume that object or array is the output of JSON.parse. For example, they are saying that if this is the object which is passed as an input, then it should go and return false. Fair enough. On the other hand, if someone has passed you the object like this, you should go and return it as true. On the other hand, if someone has passed an object like this, object 3, then again you should go and pass the value as false because there are multiple values here, right? Object is a valid JSON object or the array, that's one. The second it is saying is that, can you solve it in the O1 time? The question is trying to say that I have to go and solve it in the O of 1 time complexity. Fair? Looks very simple. What I need to do, I can make use of the objects methods here. So I can just go and write here return object dot key obj dot length is equals to 0. Then in that case you will return true, else return false. Simple. Let's try to go and run this if this works. Okay, that has a typo. This should be keys. If I go and run this again, it works fine. If I go and submit this, this should actually work. And see if that worked. Yeah, so it has been accepted. I have beaten 69.0.9% of the people. Time that it took us only 50 milliseconds. Perfect. Now let's move to the next question, the 21st question, which is there on the screen. Great. So the next question is finding the chunk of an array. Let's try to see that what it is. Given an array and a chunk size, is return a chunked array. So basically this is a function in which this is an array and this is a chunk size. And I have to return the chunked array. What is the chunked array? A chunked array contains the original elements in array but consists of sub arrays of each of the length size. The length of the last subarray may be less than size if array.length is not evenly divisible by size. Makes sense? Let's try to understand this with the help of an example. Quickly move on. It's an easy question. Let's try to quickly do it. So I have an array which looks like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have a size 1. So if the chunk size is 1, I'll go and divide into the 5 equal size: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like this. Perfectly fine. Cool. Now let's take another example. Let's say that this is an array 19632 and size is 3. So I have to pick the sizes of these 3, and because the last only 2 elements are left, so I will have 196 and 32, and the size is less than 3. Perfectly fine. Now if I go and take the another one, for example, I only have the 5 elements. I have 6. So I'll tick all of them as together as 1, and the size will be less than the chunk size. Fair enough. It looks very simple. Let's try to go and write the code to solve this problem quickly. So I will come here, and inside this I'll go and first of all write const output equals to an empty array that I go and write like this, const, and I go to the total required iterations will be equals to math dot ceiling, and I go and set that array dot length divided by size. That many iteration I'll need. Fair enough. Now I go to the let chunk equals to 0, while chunk is less than total required iteration. Make it plural. I go and do this if array dot length is greater than size. If array dot length is greater than size, in that case let data equals to array dot splice, and then I go and set that 0 comma size output dot push, and then I go and pass data. Else I go and do that output dot push, and then I go and pass this array, and this I go and do this chunk plus equals to 1, and I should go and return output. Let's go and see again. What I have done here is that first of all I go and define this output array. Then I told my total number of required iteration how much. Basically whatever is the length and the chunk size. Right? If I go and divide this, that will be the total number of required iterations. Chunk equals to 0. Okay. In the case if the size is more than the array length, then the total required iterations will be equals to 0. It will not go inside the while loop. If it doesn't go inside the while loop, even the chunk is less than total required iterations. So now what happens? Well, the time the chunk value is 0, till the time the chunk value is less than the total required iterations, right? While the chunk value is less than the total required iterations, it will go inside this. If array dot length is greater than size, that will go and put the value. Else it will go and put that inside the entire array inside the output itself. Let's try to run this and see if that works. What I'll also have to do, which I have missed here by doing this try run, is that I'll have to make, no, that's already there. Chunk is incremented, and then I go and return the output. Let's try to run this and see if it works. It has to be output. So run this perfectly, or the case 1, it has worked. Case 2, size 3, it has worked. Case 3, array size is 6 and it has returned 85326. Case 4, it has worked correctly, right? Let's try to go and submit this and see if it works. Perfect. So solution has been accepted, and I have beaten 93.72% of the people to solve this problem. Awesome. So now I'll go and stop this and move to the next problem. Now this seems to be another important but interesting problem. It is trying to say that array prototype last. Write code that enhances all the arrays so that you can call the array.last method. So basically this problem is trying to enhance the existing methods or the properties of the array class of the array object that we have. Array currently don't have a method called as a last. It says that we need to go and add a last method to the array so that it will return the last element. If the last element is not present, it should return -1. So for that, typically if I have to go and add to the properties in all the arrays, I have to use something called as prototype, and that's what you see here on the right hand side. So I have to go and write the logic here so that this last method gets added. Fair? Pretty easy and straight. Let's go and quickly make the changes in this code. So if I come here, I go and say that return this dot length. If the length is present, then I go and say that this, and I should go and say that this dot length -1, and if there is no length empty, then I should run -1. Fair enough, it should work hopefully. Let's try to go and run this. Test is passing. If I go and click on the submit, this is passing again. We go and click on the submit, and I was able to beat 54.08% of the people, and it's working all fine. Let's move to the next problem. Now the next question is grouped by. Okay, let's try to understand what the problem is. So problem is trying to say that write a code that enhances all the arrays so that you can call the write a code that enhances all arrays so that you can call the array.groupBy function method on any array, and it will return a grouped version of the array. So again, I have to enhance the property of the array, and that's why I have to go and make use of the prototype and group by. And how I'm trying to group by? I'm trying to group by the logic which is passed in this function fn. Okay. Now what is this group array? Let's try to read that. A grouped array is an object. The grouped array is an object where each key is the output of the function array I. So whenever you iterate over the entire array and you pass it to the function, and whatever the value comes out, that becomes the key value of the object. Okay, and each value is an array containing all the items in the original array with that key. Okay, let's try to understand this with the help of an example. So what we do, we have this an array. This is an input. What is my function? My function is that it takes an object and returns the key. So for example, when I go and apply fn to this will go and return me the value 1. If I go and apply fn to this will return me the value as 1. If I go and apply the function to this value, this will go and return me the value called as a 2. Okay. So what will happen is that when I go and apply array dot group by and go and apply this function fn, so what will happen? This 1, so with 1 it has passed this value id1 and id2, and this is all as a part of an array, and for 2 I just got one single size array. Fair enough. Similarly, if I go down and take another example, I again have the multiple. The function which takes the first element of the list and convert that into the string. So when I go and apply this function here, this will go and return me this. When I go and apply here also, it will go and return me this. If I go and apply in here also, I'll get the value as 1 itself, right? So the final output is that one single key, and all of these are the array inside it. Fair enough. Cool. Let's move further. Here for example, I have an array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Function is that if n value is greater than 5, then it will return. So this is returning either true or it is false. So when I go and apply this function to 1, this will return false. When I go and apply this to, this will return false. When I go and apply to this will return false. When I go and return to this will return false. With this will return false. With this, it will return true. With this, it will return true, and all of this will be returning true. Correct. So the output is that with the true, I will coming 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 as an array, and with the false 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have to go and write the code for this. I think we have understood the logic. Let's go and implement this here in the form of the code itself, right? So what I go and do here is that I go and say that const result is equals to an object which I have to go and create. Then I have to go and iterate over it. So I go and say that for let I equals to 0, I is less than, and I go and say that this dot length I plus plus, okay, and then I get the const key equals to fn, whatever the function is, and then I go and say this I value, and then if result key is present, in that case I go and say that result key, and then I go and say that push, and then I go and pass this value equal to this I. Else what I go and do is I go and say the result, and I go and pass key equals to this I. And then finally what I do once the for loop is done, then I go and return result. Let's try to run this and see if it works. All the cases are passing. Let's try to go and submit it. If all the hidden use cases also gets passed. Perfect. So my solution has been accepted. Let's try to move on to the next question. I have been able to beat 87.43% of the other users. Let's move on. Let's solve another problem which is called as sort by. Sort by again, what it's trying to say that given an array, okay, and a function fn, return a sorted array. So I'm not changing the property of the existing array. I'm just transforming the one array into the form of the sorted array. Right? You can assume fn only returns numbers, and those numbers determine the sort order of sorted array. Sorted array must be sorted in the ascending order of fn output. Fair enough. Let's try to understand with the help of example. Let's say the array is this, and when I go and apply this function fn x equal to x, it does not make any change. So I go and sort it in the ascending order of the number. So this is the value. Fair enough. Let's move further. Let's take another question, and in this I go and say that I have this array x1, x0, x minus 1. Function is I take the object and I get the value out of it. So basically I'm trying to, for each of them I have a value 1, I have the value 0, I have the value minus 1, and then I have to sort based on this value. So first of all minus 1, then 0, and then 1. So it should return me minus 1, 0 and 1 perfectly. Here again my function is x is equal to x1. It means that this value is 4, this value is 2, this value is 1. Now 1, 2, 4, first 1 should come up, so 10, 11, then 2, then 5, 2, and then 4, so it is returning me 3 and 4. So this is how I have 3 examples, and this is how the sorting looks. So let's go and quickly make the changes for it. This looks very simple code. So I will come here, function, array function, and inside this what I go and do this, I go and say that const, and then I go and pass new array equals to array dot map, and then I go and pass e, and then I go and say the return v equals to function of e, and then what should be the e itself. What is constant new array dot map e, and then return function of e and 0 to e, right? Once I have created this new array, then what I need to do is that I have to go and return new array dot sort a comma b, and what I need to do is that I have to go and say that a dot v minus b dot v. And then what I need to do is I need to go and map a. Let me go and quickly write down what I have done here is that I have taken the function array functions. What I do that I go and map each of the element, and what I have done is that I have transformed this given array into this new array, right, where I have passed the value as the key and the object, the key as a value, right? It has just tried to reverse that. And then what I have done is that I have just tried to sort it based on this. And then what I have done is whatever is the key and the value, that's how I have. So if I go and run this, all my test cases are passing. If I go and submit this, let's see that if it passes in the hidden test cases as well. So it passed the hidden test case as well. So I have been able to solve this problem.